welcome back to the Ginge Treasure. Today I was thinking of doing something a little different. I have these leftover copper charms that they all have two little loops on each side, and I think typically they're for like macrame bracelets. And eventually, probably soon, what I'm gonna do is use them to create copper bracelets. I don't really do copper bracelets, but it's a good skill to have, so why not try? But that won't be for this video. This video today is gonna be kind of like a copper pendant with no crystal involved. And so to begin, I was thinking, it's not really something I've done before. So I'm thinking that what I'll do is take this world one, which looks like a nice one to practice with, and I'll just do like a little design around the edge and then create a little loop at the top for the lace to go through and someone could wear it as a necklace. Alright, so let's get into it. To begin, I started with a 20 gauge copper wire, maybe twice the size going around for this pendant. Doesn't necessarily have to be twice that size, I guess it just kind of worked out that way. With a little bit of extra length in order to complete the loop, the lace loop that will go at the top. So to begin, I also included some 24 gauge wire, and it's about an arm's length. I probably won't need all of that, but it's always better to have more than not having enough and then running out halfway through the design. That's no fun. So what I did is, I just habitually did it off camera. But what I did off camera is I took the 2 points of the 24 gauge wire and then slid it all the way down to find this loop here in the middle. And what I'm gonna do is take that loop and just slide the 20 gauge wire right through, drop it down to the middle of the 20 gauge wire. So it's both the 24 gauge wire middle and then the 20 gauge wire middle. And I'm gonna begin here to wrap the 24 gauge wire around the 20 gauge wire. And I'm just taking my time. My technique, I'll get these out of the way. My technique for the wrap with my hand is I use my middle finger and my thumb to hold this end in place while this hand is pulling tight on the 24 gauge wire with the middle finger as kind of like a guide in order to help keep those wraps tight. And I'm just gonna get started and maybe start with about 10 wraps on the one side, and then what I'll do is flip around and then start doing 10 wraps on this side. But before I do that, I'm going to show you a little trick with the fingertips. And that's going to be in order to close this gap right here. Although I guess you could leave it open just there. That might be a cool design, but that's not what I'm gonna do. I'm just, with my fingertip, just pinching the wrapped portion into place so it lines up with the others. I'm kind of struggling through my words. It was a pretty long work day. As you might have noticed with the wood background, I am still in the hotel. Tonight is going to be the last night. We're almost done with the travel work for this event, for my other work. It's a pretty cool job. I do events set up, and it's a lot of outdoor events, a lot of like kind of camping themed events. So we do the tents setup and tent takedown, and it's a really nice gig. I love working outdoors. All right, so we're gonna stop here and just check to see. We still got a ways to go. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna keep wrapping, and then I'll stop once I get to the point where the wire lines up with this loop, and then on the other side, this loop. So I'm about like a little bit over halfway there on each side. So I'll do a few more wraps on each side. And then what I'm gonna do is take the 20 gauge wire and just poke it through those holes to lock the copper charm into in place. All right, so let's see. I think I'm probably about there on that side, and I'm just gonna flip the wire around and then do a few more wraps on the other side. It might look like it's the same side. That's just an optical illusion. What I did when I took everything out off camera is I just flipped this around. So now we're wrapping on the other side. Ideally, you want to start with why I like to start in the middle is to keep the length of the 24 gauge wires kind of equally length. So you can see how this one is slightly longer than the top one. And that's because I have a little bit more wrapping to do to catch up on the length. So once they are at about a balanced length is where I'll stop and then begin the next step. Which, let's see, looks like that's right about now. I might have even done a few too many wraps, but I'm not so worried about that. This is just kind of a trial and error segment, as many of mine tend to have been. I've been kind of on this grind of just trying first attempts of new styles on camera, which is kind of cool. So just like I said, I'm gonna take the 20 gauge wires and poke them through. And you can see how there's a little gap here, and that's because I did a little bit too much wrapping. That, like I said, that's fine. I'm not gonna worry about that. In fact, you could even, if you end up doing this at home, you could even add a little portion if you have like a bead or something and just tuck the bead right there under South America. Might be pretty cool. I would choose a bead that's kind of complementary colors to the copper. Maybe like a turquoise or I don't know, something bright. Sometimes when you're wrapping a little fast, the wire will tend to go backwards and then wrap on itself. Like if you can see this one, it looks out of place, and that's because this time I intentionally did it, but sometimes it can accidentally go down like that. That's fine, you just go backwards and then realign it and then continue wrapping forwards. It's a really easy fix. So there's not really much more technique involved with this specific wrap. It's really, I'm just doing like building a very simple frame, and then if you've seen my other videos, the ending loop is not going to be any different. But I do like that loop. It's a really nice finish. So of course I'll show you when we get to that portion of it how to finish the wrap. I'm just kind of just trying to fill the time so you can see. You can see how the wire went back under. That was exactly what I was talking about earlier. So you just gotta go back a little bit, realign it, and then put it back into place. So my aim is to, looks like I'm there. I was gonna say, my aim is to stop right there at like the top halfway, so that this whole side is wrapped, and then now I'm gonna switch over and then begin wrapping on the other side. Doesn't look as cool on the other side, but that's all right. With this specific charm, it's really designed to resemble the world, and the world doesn't look, our world is not a symmetrical planet, so the continents won't look right if it's on the back side. Although that might be an interesting concept for like a kind of a fictional world, is to just have like a mirror of the continents. If that makes sense. If anyone's like a fiction writer, that could be a cool idea for like a world map. Alright, so it looks like I might have overdone it a little bit once more, but I'm not going to worry about that today. So at this point, you reach the top, and so your wires look like this. So this 24 gauge wire, which is attached to this 20 gauge wire, is underneath this 20 gauge wire, and then vice versa. So this 24 gauge wire, which is attached to this 20 gauge wire, is underneath this 20 gauge wire. And from there, you're gonna take one of the 24 gauge wires and bring it all the way around up top, over, and then back down through under both wires, so that when you pull it tight, it kind of locks both wires into place. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the other side. So it goes over both wires and then pokes through, going underneath both wires. And so this technique is, the purpose is to lock the two wraps, or the two sides of the wrap together. And then from here, we're just gonna raise up all the wires. We're gonna bend them up. And usually I like to have a little bit more length on the tip end of my wire. I like to have at least 2 digits. This one looks like closer to 1. But that will be all right. So what I do is just take a little tip, the tip end, and then crush it with the flat part of the pliers, creating this 90-degree angle, 90 degree more or less. And then I'll take the rounded part of the pliers and then curl a little loop there. So from the side, it looks like that. And that's the loophole that the lace will go through. That way it just hangs like that, or reverse side. It'll hang like that. And this is kind of cool. It's like a little spinny, but also at the same time a little locked in. And then from there, I'm gonna take the other 20 gauge wire and just wrap it around. And I think of this as like the loop is the head, and this is like a scarf wrapping around the neck. And then once I get to the tip ends, I'm gonna take both wires and then just curl it inwards so that there's no pokey tips hanging out. So I curl them inward, and then if there's a little bit more, then upward. And then finally, with the two 24 gauge wires, I'm gonna do the same thing, is just wrap a little scarf starting from the top of the head and then working my way down the shoulders. And you can wrap the wire, or you can like spin the wire, or you can spin the pendant at this point, whatever is easier for you. And we're just gonna keep wrapping until we run out of wire. So for here, looks like that's the last little tail end of the wire. We're just gonna bring it around here and then curl it and do the same thing. Curl it in and then kind of tuck it up underneath that wrapped portion. And then we'll do the same thing on this end with that last little tip. Just curl it around that frame wire and then kind of pinch it and curl it up, tucked away. And then you have yourself a little charm.